Welcome back to Mindful Escape, the podcast that inspires you to live your best life. My name's Leighton Jewett and I'm your host, and today we have Joel Burgess on the show. Joel was originally a rugby player turned property professional, and as he worked his way up the ladder, he had an opportunity to create a tech business. With ambitions to create a company worth billions of pounds, Joel reached burnout, and he talks about this transition in his life. One of the main topics of this conversation is about life will get better when, and the story that we tell ourselves around that. This is a great episode, so listen closely and we'll jump straight in. Joel, thanks for coming on to Mindful Escape. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so name's Joel, live in Madeira with my wife, my daughter. I am a coach and I coach two types of people, coaches, and I help them predominantly to build their business and become more powerful in their coaching. And then CEOs, executives, high performers. And yeah, I've been doing that for terrible with years, but 3 years, I think. And then before that, I had a food tech business, which was wiped out by COVID. I grew that to 7 figures. And yeah, that was wiped out by COVID in a matter of months. And then before that, I was in the property space. But yeah, I'm sure we'll get into more of my journey, but that's high level.
Yeah, great. Okay, so let's jump back to the property field that you were in. Was that your own business? You were working for someone else, or what was the story there?
Yeah, and I was working for a big corporate company called Knight Frank. So I joined on their graduate scheme, back 2009 or 10 or something like that. And yeah, worked with them for, I think, I'm terrible with years. I'm not a very sentimental person, so I don't tend to like reflect much. And my past is kind of just one big year. I have no idea how long ago it was, but anyway, yeah. So I did that for probably like 5 or 6 years or so. Yeah.
Okay. And what was happening at that time? Were you happy doing what you were doing, or is there things you were unhappy with? What kind of transitioned you into starting your own thing?
Yeah, it's a good question because, like on the surface of things, I was happy, right? And I think I coined this phrase recently, which it takes finding yourself to realize how lost you were, and like I didn't realize how lost I was, and it kind of talks to Gabor Mate's thing. It's like we've normalized being a sick, we've normalized a sick society, and I kind of normalized my life, and I was happy on the surface of things, but it was very much like surface level happiness, and there was no deep fulfillment or connection. But at the same time, like I was in my 20s, there was a lot of, it was perhaps a good time in my life to have that stable income and yeah, and sort of explore things. I mean, I did get pretty lost at times. For me, my original goal was to be a professional rugby player, and got quite far. I got into the championship, and I had injury to my neck, which kind of stopped that short. And then I just kind of followed property because I wanted to make a ton of money. Like it was 2006, just pre Lehman's Brothers, and my brother's friends were like, "Yeah, come into property. All we do is lunch and drink." And I'm like, "Boom, sign me up." And I just chased the money, but the whole time there was something I was seeking, and I didn't know what that was, but I thought it was just money. So I just sought money, and I got pretty good at it. I traveled the world, worked in Jakarta, worked in Singapore, a little bit in Hong Kong, then Dubai. And then it was in Dubai where I got really good at making money. Like I was driving a Ford Mustang, going on fancy holidays, making mega money compared to my friends. And I was the one partying the most and buying all the drinks and, staying up the latest, partying the hardest. And it was then when I was at my most empty and disconnected. And it was weird because I got the thing that I wanted, it's a pretty typical story, but I got the thing I wanted: the money, the car, the fancy clothes, holidays, partying, and I was deeply disconnected. And I, had some occasions sort of, again, this comes back to that question of like, we've normalized living in a sick society. I normalized having the fear. I normalized, and we joked about it. It's like, oh, I've got the fear today, like the fear of life. Like I feared going to work, I feared my day, and then all I lived for was really the weekend. And that was my life. It was just this cycle of fearing Monday, fearing Tuesday, fearing Wednesday, getting excited by Friday, Saturday, and then that's where life happens, the Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and I'd cram it all into those 3 days, go absolute balls to the wall, have a great time, happy on the surface, but really quite disconnected to my heart in retrospect. And I now know this, but I didn't know it back then.
And so many people are in this phase of life and they keep telling themselves the story of, I'll just keep going because actually on paper my life's pretty good. So what was it that made you think, okay, now it's time for a change?
Yeah, I mean, I got a lucky break. Like there's no two ways about it. I just got a lucky break. And just coming back to that point, it's like I can take myself back to that person. If I heard that, I'd be like, yeah, it's all right for you to say that. And that would have been my reaction. So often change comes out of pain, right? For me, it was luck. It would have eventually come out of pain. But just to share experience before I share that is I coached someone recently, maybe a year ago. He just got a life-changing amount of money, a bonus that he'd been working for. And he said he'd never felt so empty in his life. He just couldn't understand it. He just felt flat. And why? I've just got this life-changing amount of money and I just feel flat. And the more I see it, the more it becomes true. And it's hard to hear that. It is hard to hear that. And it's easier to just push it to the side and carry on this chase. And for me, it was, I was just carrying on that chase. So I was working Dubai, and then I came up with this food tech idea. And that was my lucky break because I thought that idea was really driven out of wanting to be a billionaire. I read this book called How to Build $1 Billion App, and I thought I'd be a billionaire. No joke, like within a couple of years. I was so naive, so young, and just like naive. And I was like, cool, I'm gonna be mega, mega rich. This is a great idea. And I had so much belief in myself, so much passion for this, and I had so much drive for money. And then that was my lucky break. So I founded this food tech business. I raised about £1 million. And in the process of that, I had a number of kind of emotional breakdowns, panic attacks. And, at that time, I had no idea of personal growth. I had no idea of mindset. I had no idea of productivity. It was just like, how hard can I work? And I remember on the tube by Sloane Square, like having this tightness around my neck, really struggling to breathe, really wanted to cry. So I ran off and found a bench and just bawled my eyes out. And I was like that for the evenings for quite a few weeks. And it was at that point, I was like, right, I need to change. I need to learn, because the amount of work I was going to have or had would never change. So I was like, right, let's jump into the book. So I started reading the books. I started reading self-development books. And then that was the trigger for me. And, I just haven't turned back since.
Yeah, that's interesting. So it didn't actually come from working for the other company. It came actually when you were running your own business,
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
that
exactly.
realization.
Mm-hmm.
So you talked about the physical aspects of it and kind of like the outside view. What were the challenges that were going on internally throughout that time?
It's really hard to say because I had such little awareness, so it's very hard to say. I almost didn't allow myself to experience or become mindful of what was going on. I just also had no mindfulness. I was my thoughts. I was the experience. I was my feelings. There was no disconnection. So there was very little separation from my internal world. So it's really hard to like look at it from a bird's eye view and analyze. I mean, I could probably make assumptions now, but it was just this cycle of I hate my work, but it's going to make me loads of money. When I make loads of money, then I'll be happy, then I'll be free. I'll stick this out to the weekend. I'll party hard, and then just endure Monday to Thursday. Like that was the pattern, and that was the story, right? Life will get better when. It was this classic optimistic denial. I'll be happy when. I'll be able to when. So it's just delaying my life. And the more you seek, or the more I sought like external stimuli or external or happiness through external things like clothes. I had a shopping addiction. I spent so much money on shopping, got that short dopamine hit, but then it just always left me wanting more. And of course, you probably know about dopamine, but it just wants to eat more of itself. It's never enough. So it's constantly chasing this more money, more clothes, more partying, longer nights, bigger nights. And there's what goes up, it's got to come down. So just the downs were so big. And then, of course, when you're down, you're like question everything. And you're like, well, I've got to go and do more or buy more or get more. And it's just a horrific cycle that I was just trapped in.
When you're in the business building phase and you've got this life will be better when mentality,
Mm-hmm.
there's people I know that are listening to this now and they're in that and they're saying, well, it doesn't matter because when I get X, I'll be able to do Y. Or when I get X, I will feel like Z. What is the message to those people listening right now?
Completely reverse it. Completely reverse it. So there's this false belief that once I have, then I'll do, then I'll be. And this may sound a little bit woo-woo, right? But hopefully your audience are kind of on board with this, right? They're a little bit open. There might be some curiosity to what I'm about to share. But when we're operating on that frequency of lack, once I have, then I'll do, then I'll be, all we'll do is attract more wanting. Because what we have is a result of who we are and what we do. It's really simple. So rather than this belief of once I have the money, then I'll do this thing, then I'll be happy. As long as you're living like that, you'll never get to the doing, you'll never get to the being, you'll never get to the happiness, you'll never get to the fulfillment, because what we have is a result of what we do and who we are, our being. So it's about flipping that on the head and asking yourself, how would I be if I had that money? If we use money as an example, what would I do if I had that money? And when I sat with those questions, it was, I'd be relaxed, I'd be calm, I'd be mindful, I'd be joyful, I'd be loving, I'd be grateful, I'd be generous, I'd be kind. So those were the being states. And then the doings, it's things like I would take breaks, I would prioritize my exercise, I would go for long walks, so take afternoons off. And the beauty of that is when you actually follow through with those doings, it creates space for insight, it creates space for creativity. And it's creativity that really moves your business forward more than hard work. But as long as you're in that space of lack, once I have, then I'll do, then I'll be, it will just work yourself to the ground. There's no creativity and you can't see the wood for the trees. So therefore, you're never going to move your business forward. It's just a graft. And it's a one-way street to burnout. So it's about being the person now who already has what you want. And it takes real guts and balls to live like that. But you've got to just believe in that wholeheartedly. Like you've got to believe in that because it's the truth. It is the truth. We are always creating our reality. We're always manifesting. So as long as you're living in that once I have, all you're going to attract is more wanting, more lack. You're just going to run yourself into the ground.
Yeah. The other thing I wanted to jump back to quickly was you were talking about obviously working really hard and then craving that dopamine, that bigger night out, or whatever it is that you crave. There's a few people I've spoken to recently where health becomes a secondary thing. And the most important thing is earning the money, getting that material thing, living a certain lifestyle, and then we'll worry about the health after. How
Mhm.
was that in your lifestyle at that time, and what would you recommend, or what would you change going back now?
Hmm. I suppose I've been very fortunate in the fact that I've always had a real passion for health and wellness. Like my food tech business was born out of my desire to be healthy. So I've always had a respect for health, and I've always been pretty healthy. Um, but it's interesting. Like I now understand healthy is totally different. Like my understanding of healthy then was like CrossFit, smashing myself at the gym. How much can I lift? It was all about like poof, 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 poof. The total opposite now. It's like back then it was like I was going to do that stuff to relieve stress and to get fitter and healthier, but all I was doing was adding on stress. Like CrossFit it's a pretty incredible sport, but it's high stress. It's and I was doing CrossFit at the time whilst running, so much stress, so much unconscious stress, and then so much unneeded stress. So for me, it was less about not prioritizing health. I still prioritize health, but my understanding of what health was is very different to what I understand now. So what I would say to that person right now is there's no need to tell him to prioritize health. He already was. It's like prioritize recovery, prioritize movement, prioritize presence, prioritize things that get you in your body, prioritize that mind body connection, prioritize um, wholesome food rather than just eating to lose weight or eating to get jacked. So yeah, that's what I'd say to him.
Yeah, I think it's a reframing of what health is, because I was guilty of the same, right? I would just go to the gym 6, 7 days a week because in my mind that was healthy, but in fact
Mhm.
that was just my coping mechanism.
Mhm.
It was what I was using to distract myself from the stress and the anxiety and whatever else I had going on at work that day.
Mhm.
So if we reframe what health is rather than it's just working out, and then thinking about other things like you said, like movement, I guess, comes into that as well, but it could be different types of movement,
Mhm.
breath work,
Mhm.
mindfulness, and yeah, what we're eating as well. Because I think there is a big focus, especially for guys, about either getting massive or getting really lean. There's not
Mhm.
really a health mentality.
Not at all. Like, and that's been my narrative for most of my life. We grew up watching Rocky and Arnie and things like that. So it was just like, how big can I get? I mean, I started lifting weights at 13, 14, and it was just like go down, chuck the plates on, how much can I bench, how much can I squat, how big can I get? So for me, a lot of my journey with health now is about reversing all of that conditioning. And I actually just started sort of internal kung fu, sort of Tai Chi and Wing Chun. And the Shifu was saying to me, it's actually all about how relaxed you can be. And the training we're doing now is just literally how to relax. And I'm doing these standing exercises of internally relaxing things. And it's like a total reversal of everything I've ever known of how relaxed you could be. Because when you come from that place of relax, you can connect to other energy sources. You can connect to other strength beyond just the surface level pecs and muscles and what have you. There's something deeper than that. And that's the part I really want to connect to next. But yeah, for me, like I'm a big guy and it's reversing a lot of that conditioning.
Yeah, so good. I wanted to jump back to you were talking earlier about your train journey when you were feeling very flustered and
Mm-hmm.
going through a difficult time. On the transition there from realizing that you were going through this in your life, what were the main, so let's say one or two lessons that you learned through that period?
Yeah. I was still deeply unconscious then, right? It was still right. How can I sort this out so I can make more money? So that was really the driver. But what happened is that I started reading, and that was my main lesson. And I really believe that it all starts with curiosity, like, and following that curiosity and having an open mind. And I've always had a very open mind, and my mind has got more and more open. And the more I learn, the more I realize how little I know. So the open-mindedness just keeps on growing. But there was just a little bit of mindedness. And then that just led me to books. And I just followed my curiosity and I started reading. And then I think one of the big shifts for me was, so I read this book called The Coaching Habit, which was really driven out of, okay, how do I manage my team? I had a team of, I think, 7 or 8, I can't remember, but I had a team and I wanted to manage them through coaching. So I read this book, Coaching Habit. Then I was like, oh, I love the sound of this. I'm going to do a coaching course. And I did a coaching course and I had that insight of, I'm not my thoughts. And that's just like when everything changed for me. It was that one insight. So, but it all started with that curiosity and following that curiosity and being open-minded and reading. Just reading transformed my life. I fell in love with all the self-help books. And it was reading that was the trigger.
Yeah, I often think that the starting point is awareness, but actually listening to you now, it comes before awareness.
Mm-hmm.
And if
Yeah,
you're not open-minded or curious, then you won't get to that point of awareness.
totally. Yeah, it really starts with open-mindedness and curiosity. And I just encourage any listeners now, yeah, if just that, yeah. And the fact they're listening to this right now shows curiosity. It shows open-mindedness. Keep following that. Keep following that, because that's what will transform your life. And I kind of have no time. Actually, that's probably a bit far, but there's a lot of closed-minded people out there, and it's challenging, and it just close off, right? Because takes a lot of responsibility to open your mind and to maybe admit being wrong, or maybe admit that you aren't happy or you do need to change. It takes a lot of guts, a lot of courage to do that. But yeah, that courage to be open-minded and curious and be okay with being wrong, kind of scrapping the rule book. Like I'm now in a place now, I'm happy to scrap the rule book. Like my journey with this kung fu is like, this is deeply challenging and triggering for me, because it's like everything I've ever learned about physical health and lifting weights is literally being screwed up. Like, how relaxed can you be? That's my goal. Like, what? So yeah, curiosity, open-mindedness, that's where it starts.
Yeah, it really goes against the grain, doesn't it? Because you grow up with a certain direction in your mind. And then as soon as you start becoming open-minded and your beliefs are challenged,
Mm-hmm.
and then it's understanding that what you believe might not be true.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's facing yourself.
Mm-hmm. Totally. And one thing that's coming for me is this understanding of our inner and outer world. And I was, again, one of a really lucky break I got was that I joined this sort of mastermind. 3 friends, there's 4 of us. There was actually, at the time, we were all in the health and wellness space, and we formed this little group to help each other's business out. Again, all driven by business. But being around those 4 people, they were very curious people, very open-minded people. So we just started asking questions, and we started to explore things, and we started to do different things. And that was a huge, huge factor, that environment. And I think if you desire change, you have to change your environment. You have to change your environment. I changed my environment dramatically by being in that group, by reading more. They were my sort of 2 lucky groups, but lucky breaks. But if you find yourself, or find a group that's open-minded, go to breathwork classes, go to things that feel edgy to you, where there are open-minded people, and surround yourself with people. And if you really resonate with someone, you have these deep conversations, you start asking questions, keep them near, keep them close to you, because we have this journey, or this sort of experience of our inner and outer world. And a big thing I taught in my first coaching images was the idea of living by design, which is designing your environment to be aligned with the person you want to be. So thinking about who's the person you want to be. If that's an entrepreneur, then join entrepreneur groups, read entrepreneur books, only follow entrepreneurs, and unfollow everyone else. Don't need to get rid of all your friends, but just grow beyond that, grow past that. Because if you don't do that, it's very, very hard to break free. There's this thing called the crab mentality. Don't know if you've heard of it, but if you put crabs in a bucket, if one crab tries to get out, the other crabs will bring it back in. Because it's like, I don't want you to break free. I want you to die with me. And as brutal as it sounds, humans do that in groups of friends. It's very triggering if someone is changing faster than you or is breaking the mold, because it forces you to look at yourself. So this is really crucial in just being really deliberate about who you spend time with. It doesn't mean you need to get rid of all your friends. I've not done any of that, but I've just created other groups of friends where there is an open-mindedness. And sure enough, people from other groups of friends, the open-minded people, have started asking questions. And, you know, you're then the ripple effect. And again, this is why it just takes so much courage to do this, because it can feel quite lonely at the start, because you want to talk about all this stuff. When you understand and you go to the depths and you have these insights, you want to talk about all this stuff. And if you can't with your original group of friends, it's quite a lonely experience. So having that environment, surrounding yourself with open-minded people is really crucial. So yeah, that was another insight from earlier.
Yeah, that's really good. It actually takes me back to a time when I started questioning things, and I opened up a conversation with my family about something, and they all basically turned back to me and were like, Leighton, you've completely lost your mind. And I was like, no, hang on. And then I'm trying to justify it. But yeah, I think you have to realize that you're on a different journey and just, yeah, find the right people to communicate that with.
Exactly.
But yeah, great lesson. So before we finish up, I just wanted to ask one more question. When I ask this question, very often people say there's nothing that they would change about the past, because obviously that would change where they are today. But if there was one piece of advice you could give your younger self, let's go back to Joel when he was money hungry and just chasing that. What advice would you give?
Yeah, I can see why people say like, well, what's coming up for me now is like, whatever advice I gave him, he wouldn't have listened.
Yeah.
So that's probably the truth. That's probably the truth. And I'm sure you've heard that before. Honestly, it'd just be like, pick up a book and read what you're interested in, read what makes you feel alive. Read. Yeah. Read. There's so many other things I'd like to say to that. I'd also say, frickin' start saving money, man. Start putting that money away. Oh, it's so painful looking back at like how much money I made and how much money I literally threw at the wall. The amount of money I spent on clothes and stupid stuff. So if I could go back to him and just say, create an ISA, put it in S&P or whatever, just park some money, man. Stop having this false belief that, once I'm a billionaire, then it doesn't work like that. It's an incremental game. Stay patient, and yeah, play compound, not gambling.
Yeah, it's hard because you get caught up in that lifestyle, right? And then you want to keep going with it.
Totally, yeah. It's that's why they call it the hamster wheel, right? Or the rat race. It's just a never-ending cycle. And I'm so grateful for I actually had a house under offer, a new build at that time, and it was prior to building my food tech business. But I was in Dubai and I couldn't quite get a mortgage and blah blah blah. I'm so grateful that I didn't buy that house, because if I was in that, I would be in this cycle of chasing and keeping up with the mortgage payments. I wouldn't have given me the freedom to invest, and I had this pocket money that I invested in this food tech business, which led to nothing. I lost tens of thousands of pounds, maybe even six figures through that whole process. But it was the best thing that's ever happened to me, because it allowed me to be where I am right now. Yes, I don't own a house, and yes, I don't have much to show for it financially right now, apart from a business which is fueling a life that I absolutely love. I've never felt so connected, so aligned, and passionate. I wake up, I genuinely love what I do. I woke up at 4 this morning, no alarm. I was just like excited to do what I do. I live in a state of flow where it really is like life feels very rhythmic, and it feels like a beautiful dance right now where I get to create things that I love. And had I not had that break, there's a lot of many breaks, but that was a big one. So yeah.
Was there something that you did? I know I said last question, but one more. Was there something you did or something you do that has helped you find what you're passionate about? Because this is something people ask a lot.
Yeah. It's a really interesting one. I was having this conversation yesterday, actually. And I actually think there's this, it's a really nuanced thing. I think there's stages. To this. And I think the problem with society right now is that, and the problem of the idea of follow your passion, it creates this idea that we get passion from things, similar to like once I, then I will. So it's like we get passion from things, and actually passion is an output. So you get passion by mastering a craft. So if you expect to have passion, you're never going to get to a point where you master a craft. And I think what's happening now, and if you look at how much people are changing jobs right now, is that they go to a job or they start something and it's hard and it's not exciting. And they're like, well, this isn't for me. It can't be my passion. It can't be my calling. So it's like on to the next thing. And they just go on this cycle. The things that I'm passionate about have actually come around from mastering my craft and kind of honoring the suck. Like public speaking, writing, they were honestly like my two worst things. I hated writing. I hated public speaking. They would give me a panic attack many years ago. They're two things I'm so deeply passionate about now.
Sure. Thank you for sharing. Thanks for coming on.
You're very welcome. It's been a pleasure.
And there we have it. Thank you so much for listening. The biggest takeaway for me was around curiosity and being open-minded. I always had this perception that actually everything starts with awareness, but without curiosity and without being open-minded, you'll never find that awareness. So it's really important that you're willing to do that and also challenge your beliefs, the beliefs that have been ingrained into you since your childhood, because things change. And although you might have been taught something a certain way, that might not be the way that it should be or that it is. So take that on board. The other point that Joel made about finding yourself to realize how lost you were is such a powerful statement, because when we're in that moment and when you're in the moment that you're in right now, you don't realize how lost you are until you come out of it. So be aware of that and know that you haven't got all the answers right now. So going back to the point before, by being open-minded and curious, you become aware of where you are right now and what you need to do to take the next steps and move forward and live a better life. Thank you so much for listening. If you found value, please make sure you share it with your friends on social media, and I'll see you same time next week.